Hello everyone, my name's Paul.
I'm Nicola.
And I'm Fabiha.
Welcome to our podcast talking about careers in libraries and the information sector. This is the first podcast in a series of 3, and the focus here is going to be on jobs and roles in the university library, and we'll also discuss careers in the wider information sector. We've got a series of questions and themes that we're using so we can structure our podcasts. So I think Fabiha is going to ask the first question.
Yeah, so can you tell me about your role in the university library and describe what a typical day or week might involve?
Absolutely. So I am the Research Intelligence Manager based in the library, and my role is one of the more quirky ones in that some people think it belongs to our research and enterprise services, some people do see it as a library role, and I think that goes to show how diverse the roles available to you in the library are. So I guess you could describe my role as researching the research. So I don't look specifically at a topic like academics would. I look at the academic landscape as a whole, and I do different types of reporting for the university. So the point of doing this is to kind of understand the patterns and the impact of our research publications. And I guess mainly look at quantitative things. So there's 3 sort of levels of metrics. These are author level, article level, and journal level. And these are kind of seen as traditional metrics, but it always needs to be kind of paired with qualitative discussion about how research is being conducted, etc. And there's also another type of metric called alt metrics, which is quite new, and it starts to look at social media, news reports, other ways that kind of publications can have an impact. So I also do different types of training, so others in my team have supported that. And that includes things like advocating for the responsible use of metrics. I won't go into too much kind of depth on that, but just ensuring that, metrics are used for the correct purposes. So attempting to kind of quantify this impact, it's not a bad thing. As I said, it starts to show the kind of patterns of our university. Do we have kind of key strengths in different topic areas? Which universities in other countries are we working with, and do we have kind of strengths with? And it does feed into kind of things of key importance to the university, so things like the world rankings, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the Research Excellence Framework, throwing quite a few acronyms out here. That's the REF if anyone has heard of it. And it can help sort of aid in decision making. And yeah, I just kind of find it quite interesting, really. I will say I used to be a student myself at Lancaster University, so I studied physical geography, and whilst I'm not directly working in that field, it's definitely those transferable skills that I am using, kind of data analysis, report writing, and I definitely wouldn't be in this role without sort of working, studying at Lancaster. So I could say more, but Fabiha, maybe you want to talk a little bit about your role, because we're in the same team, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm also in the open research team, and my title's actually quite long. So it's Research Engagement and EDI Assistant, which is a graduate trainee role, and it's a relatively new role. I think I'm the first to sort of come into this role in this library. And there's sort of different parts of my role, so I wouldn't say I have a kind of consistent day-to-day or week-to-week rota that I persistently follow, but some of the things I do is kind of maintaining content on library web pages, maintaining records on Pure, which is the university's research information management system, but then some of my favourite parts are kind of helping out with events, organising events, working with collaborators across the university, but also in the wider community. So, for example, collaborating with the public library and also community groups such as Queer by Gum, and sort of hosting different events with them. And I also help in sort of updating LibGuides and producing book stands. And a lot of my work is also on Canva, in which I create content for our social media. But there's sort of a lot in this role and a lot that you can kind of do depending on your own interests, which is fantastic. And I've kind of also worked with Nicola on certain things like Citation Justice Project, which we might touch on later perhaps. Mm-hmm. Paul, how about you?
Yep. Thanks for that. It's interesting to hear from your two roles to begin with, because like you said, Fabiha, it's a new role. And I think your role is fairly new to the library sort of information sector, isn't it? It's not, whereas my role, I think, falls more into a traditional librarian role, which people might have expected us to start with. So I think that's quite interesting to start with these newer roles. So my job title is faculty librarian, and I work for the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences faculty. And so that covers 9 departments, including English and Literature and Creative Writing, politics, philosophy, religion, Lancaster Institute of Contemporary Arts, which involves film, theatre, design. So, 9 departments across all of the faculty. And my particular emphasis is on teaching and learning. So that might be teaching people how to use the library, the use of critical information literacy skills or library research skills, how to search, how to reference, how to evaluate information, how to use it ethically and with integrity. So I deliver workshops, lectures, so it might be a lecture to 100 people, it might be a workshop with 15 or 20 people. And also I do a number of student face-to-face appointments as well. So that's a big part of my role, the actual face-to-face work teaching library research skills. I also do a lot of liaison with the department, so talking to the library representatives in the department, talking with the heads of department to understand what their needs are. And I might also represent the library at faculty-wide meetings as well. I think as we've touched on there, you've both touched on project work, which I think we'll sort of go into more detail in one of the other podcasts later. But it's a big part of all our work, I think, is doing extra projects outside your main work, if you like. So I've been involved in a schools and colleges engagement project over the last couple of years, focusing on the extended project qualification and widening participation students. I'm also involved in the staff development group, Nicola, with yourself, and I've fed into the citation justice project as well. So a typical week for me might be preparing teaching sessions, attending faculty meetings, maybe 3 or 4 individual appointments with students, delivering teaching either in seminars, in lectures, and preparing that teaching as well. So that's a little bit of detail about our job. So if we just explore the other roles in the university library, Nicola, would you like to say a little bit more about the roles in the open research team?
Yeah, absolutely. So feel free to chip in, Fabiha, as well, because we are in the same team. But I think the first thing to highlight is the name. So open research isn't something that everyone across the university is necessarily fully advocating for. A lot are very for it. So to explain it, this sort of, maybe you would have already have heard of open access. So this is the idea that when research is conducted, it is available as quickly as possible, as widely as possible. It's not hidden behind a paywall. You may not be aware, but as a library, we spend millions paying for kind of online subscriptions, sometimes including access to research that our own academics have actually produced, which is interesting. So open research goes one step further, where it doesn't only include a kind of research output, so a book or an academic paper, it also includes things like the data behind it, coding, anything that kind of makes that piece of research able to be replicated. And a really great example of when open research was, sort of showcased as an excellent thing was actually through COVID. So suddenly everyone had this joint mission to quickly research it, get this vaccine made. Papers were being published as what's called preprints, which is almost like a draft version being shared. And it was just amazing to see how quickly research can be conducted when everyone is working together in that way and not kind of financially motivated, which is an underlying factor, unfortunately, of research. So within our team, we have sort of 4 main areas. One is research intelligence, which I've already kind of detailed somewhat. The second is research data management. So that role looks after the data, making sure it's kind of stored in the correct way, be it sort of sensitive data, just able to be accessed by others and discoverable. And there's a lot more that goes into that. Open access, which I mentioned too. So the main, I would say, 2 parts of open access that I'll go into, because there's way too many categories, it's just getting bigger and bigger. So one is called green open access. So that's the route where we will place a research output in our institutional repository, and then it'll be available, the kind of what's called the author accepted manuscript, or the version before a publisher starts making it all sort of fancy and set out how they want it to be. And then the second, which has quite a cost attached, is called gold open access, and that's when the piece of research is available straight away on the actual publisher website, so more people hopefully will be able to sort of discover it. And then the 4th area, I think I'm on 4th now, is research culture and open monographs. So open monographs is essentially long form publications. So the easiest way to describe it is quite a large book focused on a very sort of specific subject area. Not all books are monographs. And I'm sure our lead in the area has a lot to say on the different categorizations. But yes, books essentially. And then research culture as well. So there's a little bit of synergy between this area and mine, because part of it is looking at the sort of working landscape for academics. So things like metrics that may be used, well, they are used to support academic promotions, making sure that those who are sort of taking the decisions on academic promotion cases understand truly what these metrics reflect, and that the academics feel that they're not being unfairly treated. Because again, this could be a whole podcast in itself, but all the different kind of things that go into making these metrics. You never want to use one by itself, so citation count is the easiest metric, and there's a misconception that if a paper has a high number of citations, that means it must be high quality and it must have had a high impact. Well, in fact, all of the citations might be citing that paper, saying we don't like the methodology in this paper, we wouldn't want that sort of repeated. It doesn't necessarily mean sort of the quality element is there. So yeah, part of the sort of research culture role is that. Don't know if you have anything additional to say, and maybe bring in a little bit more of your role as well.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, in terms of my role, I kind of I've focused a lot on sort of open access. So one of the things that we have is Open Access Week. And one thing that I did through my role was to try and basically demystify what open access is to people, because I think you hear the term and sometimes it's like, oh gosh, like what does it mean? And, is it something more than what it kind of says on paper? But actually it's simply what it, as Nicola described it to be. So last year in Open Access Week, one of the things we did was we had a free public lecture with two of our academics, and we went to the public library to do that so that it was more accessible to the sort of larger Lancaster community. And obviously we had like students coming from campus as well. And I think it's essentially just kind of sharing really, all of our academics have such interesting research, and kind of making that accessible and sort of sharing that message of the sort of benefits of open access. But I think you've pretty much covered sort of the other roles within that kind of service.
Would you like to say something about operations and services, the types of roles that would be so this is another area of another team in the library.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this and the operation and services team is probably the one that anyone coming into the library will automatically just be, they'll be the first point of contact for many people. You might not have heard of any of our roles, for example, but you probably have seen a library service advisor. So this is usually, they're behind that front desk, and they're able to help you both face-to-face and online. And then we have kind of on sort of above them are the managers who also sort of kind of have a reflective role on like the space and experience in general for students and visitors. We also have our facilities coordinators who kind of make sure that everything is secure. And you might have also seen our collection assistants, or I think like they basically essentially like shelve books, and that's something you might associate quite regularly with the idea of libraries. But their roles, again, are quite varied, but probably the ones that people associate most with library work.
That's right,
yeah.
I'm the kind of first to admit, as I said earlier, I was a student about 10 years ago now, and I did not realise the expanse of jobs and roles that were available in the library, and all the roles you've just described, I was like, that's the library.
That's the library, yeah.
That's what I see.
Yeah.
I think I'd even got my job here, and I was still like, there's 70 people that work here, what?
No, I remember thinking when I like kind of joined the library first time around, I was just like, why are there so many people in the office? And now I'm like, we need more, to be honest.
I've had a quick count up. Do you know, or can you guess? So I think Nicola's guess there was 70 roles in the library, but I did check for this podcast. How many do you think there is?
I'm going to say 68.
I'm going to adjust to 72.
Oh.
And it's actually 83.
Oh,
There's 83 roles in the library.
Okay.
Wow.
Wow.
Yes,
So,
even more than I thought.
That's more than...
Yeah. And within your open access team, that's created another sort of 10 roles almost in the last 5 or 10 years. So really growth area there. Within my team, so I'm in the learning, teaching, engagement team. I've talked about my own role. There are also librarians focused on content. So this is purchasing material, acquiring material, making it available. We also have an information specialist role that focuses on systematic reviews. And we also have a learning and teaching coordinator who has an engagement and administrative role. Also within the learning and teaching engagement team, we have our team of learning developers. So they're focusing on academic skills, support, so academic writing, preparing for exams, maths and stats support.
And this again might be something that students have accessed but might not actually realise is a team based in the library. Right. So if you come into the library, you usually have like some signs being like learning development team this way. But and I think also another role that people might associate with the library, and increasingly so now that we have the sort of special collection, kind of our new area, the archive centre, is the sort of archives manager and sort of special collection roles, who kind of look after our archives, and also they've recently been more involved with things like Campus in the City. So if you had the chance to visit there, you might have come across them. And I think that's a really exciting role as well. Which,
I think we're going to talk more about that role
absolutely.
In a later podcast as well. there's 3 more teams.
Yeah.
Could you imagine? There's a contents and acquisitions role team. So they have content assistants who are literally buying books and putting them into the system, which people I think would identify. But they're also dealing with metadata, so licensing, dealing with licenses of different databases. And if anybody's requested a book through our request a resource form, those are the people that are dealing with it. 2 other mentions of two other teams. We've got a technical support team, if you like, so 3 people supporting us on our technical infrastructure, and these are very much computer science graduates, I would say. And then last but not least, we have our leadership team, our library leadership team, which is our library director, 3 assistant directors, supported by our library admin assistant and our library departmental officer. So I think that's a good overview of the roles in the university library. If we just take a few moments to think outside in the wider library and information sector, there's a whole, what other institutions typically employ librarians. I've got a list here that we're referring to, and this was taken from the Chartered Institute of Libraries and Information Professionals, so that's CILIP, which is our professional organisation. So I'll start off. I'll mention one, which is very close to my heart, actually, UK Public Library Network. So there used to be around 4,000 public libraries throughout the UK. That's probably dropped over the last 10 years, I would say, due to funding. There'll be central libraries in most cities, and then a network of branch libraries, including mobile libraries. That's why it's quite close to my heart, because I used to manage a mobile library when I worked at another public library. So that's one example of libraries outside.
Yeah, and I think one that people might already kind of have had some experience with would be school and college libraries. So I remember I used to be I guess an equivalent of a library student ambassador, and I was a student librarian in high school. So
you started early then.
I started early. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's always been my dream. So and it's sort of interesting, I think, like kind of seeing that just the variety of different libraries there and what kind of purpose they're fulfilling.
We also have, there'll be libraries in law firms, you have prison libraries, information and libraries in NHS is really important. That's a big area where, you really have to rely on good quality information in NHS, because that's what, prescriptions, treatments are based on
examples
evidence.
of staff as well who have gone off to work in
Yes.
the NHS after working in our library as well, and I'm sure it will have happened the other way as well. In fact, one of our ex-associate directors came from there, so there really is.
Oh, I was remembering someone who used to work in a prison library.
Right.
Yeah, which was really exciting when I found out. I was like, tell me everything about what happened there. But
so that's Fabia, that's an interesting point. There is a lot of, we have people work here now that have come from the NHS.
Yeah. So it's not to say you can go and down one of these paths. You can actually intermingle between them.
Yeah.
It's what you were saying about sort of these transferable skills and kind of, you sort of gain these skills throughout all of the different experiences you accumulate throughout your life. And but it's also great seeing different, someone go from an NHS library to a higher education one, because people are still staying in the library because it's a great place to work.
Business and commercial sector, they rely on good quality information. And also there's a whole network of specialist libraries, and you might have just one person in a library, or one or two people. So I noted down there's a working class movement library in Manchester, which probably not many people know about, but it's there to be accessed. And I was thinking about the range of government libraries out there as well, and Fabiha and I were really thrilled to go and see the House of Commons library, which is a really specialist library.
All of our colleagues here know that we've been to that's why Nicola just gave us a look. But yeah, it's a fantastic library if you get the chance to visit. Hopefully we'll go again soon.
So those are the wider sort of librarian type jobs, and then there's a whole range of career paths outside libraries in the what we would call the wider information sector, and they sort of differ from the careers of a librarian. So these sort of fall under the broader terms of information management, information specialist, information scientist, and again the CILIT website lists careers such as information architect, taxonomist, information manager, information governance officer, information rights manager, information scientist, web manager. So they're dealing with data, and I think taxonomist, you mentioned publishing in open access. I suppose that might be linked in some way, dealing with data. And I think there is a crossover between information specialists and publishing as well. And I think you can sort of see these some of these roles at the university, actually. So we've got cataloguers and acquisition staff in the library. So they might be information scientists rather than librarians. There's an information officer who answers freedom of information requests and gives advice on GDPR and data protection at the university as well. And I think we can see your role, competitive intelligence officer, that sort of, falls into that category. Any other thoughts on the wider information sector? Or
again, I think it comes back to there's so much that the experiences and knowledge that you gain from working in this sector can kind of broaden out to, and the different skills that you learn are so transferable.
Definitely. And just to say as well, not everyone now is coming from, library school necessarily. Traditionally, there's so many different routes in that all of our degrees really that we offer at Lancaster could lead you to a library career, whether you want to stay in libraries, which of course we hope, or you want to branch off and do something different. It's just a really great place that offers all the skills, and lovely.
Okay, so thanks for listening, everyone. Make sure you tune in to our next episode.